industry identification is extremely important when you're starting out creating a acquisition platform in 2023. You want to make sure you identify the right industry to get into because some are a little bit more complex and a little bit easier, depending on which way you go. And some have higher barrier to entry and some have a lower level of barrier to entry. So today what we want to do is share with you for the first time a little bit about the IB acquisition course, the number one business buying course in the world. We're actually going to do content on every section in that course to be able to bring you the backstage of what this course content.
All right, so first section we'll be discussing is going to be market consolidation. Now, there's two metrics I want you to pay attention to, close attention. Matter of fact, it's going to be the number of businesses in that industry and the number of equity that the top 25% of those companies have. Where can you find this data? Well, a few resources that we will mention later in the video is IBIS World. Specifically, you can find what's the market consolidation. Now, why I mentioned these two metrics? Very simply. First, you want to know is that you have access to a pool of businesses that you could tap into. You know, you're going to have more success when there's 10,000 companies that you can reach out to as opposed to just 100 or 5 or 1,000, right? And then the second most important thing, which is the percentage of equity that these companies hold. I've seen industries such as pharmaceutical, distribution, and manufacturing where the top 5 to 25 companies own anywhere between 60 to 85% of market share. Now that it leaves you with about 40 to 15% where you can compete, but it's really just going to make it very hard for you. It's going to increase that barrier to entry. You're just going to have that competition on top of you, as opposed to an industry where the top 25 companies only own, say, 30%, and now you got 70% you can play in. Because you want to understand when you're acquiring these businesses, it also adds up to a percentage of market share. And as you build them up, essentially, you're expanding your market share. So now let's move on to section 2, which is why banks love service-based businesses. Let me pass it on to my partner, Ansi.
So banks love service-based businesses because it's almost always a necessity. Let's just go over what a service-based business is. And in fact, I'll give you a few examples. Think about you have to wash your clothes, a laundromat, and then you have car repair shops, tire shops, and you also have construction, which we're talking about plumbing, right? That's a necessity. And we're talking about landscaping, right? So all of these businesses are service-based businesses. And these are services that you not only go to once, but you continuously go to them. And it is something that you would typically for, the rest of your life actually need that kind of service. When it comes to air conditioning, certain parts of the United States, you need that a little bit more. So that is something that is a necessity. So it's a service that's being rendered to you by that company, which is the service provider. And banks love them because typically these businesses, they are asset heavy. That means they have a lot of tangible physical assets, equipment, whether it's real estate. They have a lot of physical assets that the bank could actually collateralize. And in the event that the deal or the loan the bank actually gave you did not perform the way they expected it, they can actually take those assets and liquidate, which it would have a lower value. But they love service-based businesses because there's a lot of different moving parts to it, and they have physical, tangible assets that the bank could collateralize. And they love that because it's repeatable and it's actually predictable income, right? So we're going to go to the second part of the profit margins and what kind of profit margins you should be looking for.
Before that, I want to expand on what Ansi was speaking previously. I think there's 2 extra points I want to add. First of all is these are predictable revenue streams. That's really why banks love them, because you're going to be able to pay that monthly loan amount every year consistently. And that typically comes from the contracts they have, which is typically either a yearly or multi-year. But second, you want to take a look at the seasonality of these businesses, right? You're going to see more upward spike in customers for heating when it comes to winter in certain states like Utah where it snows. as opposed to summer, where you're going to see more of a uptrend in AC conditioning. So take a look at the seasonality of the businesses, because that can affect and will affect the revenue stream. See how predictable or how stable that is. Now, let me move on to profit margins. That is very important. Again, the reason why we don't deal in certain businesses like retail and restaurants is because their profit margins are very low. You really don't have room for error. Another important thing when it comes to profit margins is the more money you can keep as a business, the more you can reinvest. That's going to be your capital expenditure. So if we need more equipment, if we need more assets, we can even take some of that money and buy other businesses with. Or if we need to do research and development, we could tap into it. But rule of thumb, you want anything that's 15% and more. Obviously, when you buy these businesses, you can definitely increase them. There's a lot of redundancies, a lot of expenses that really are unnecessary. But off the gate, you want to make sure you're looking at a 15% profit margin upwards. Ansi, expand on that a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Reason why we say that this doesn't really apply for guys who are experts that are already doing this, right? This actually applies to the beginner who's looking to come in and buy their first maybe seven-figure business. And that's who this really applies to. So you want to get into a high profit margin because you're when it comes to the financing in the bank and they're looking at your background, especially if you have no real background in the business that you're acquiring, then you want to give them every reason to say yes and avoid saying no. And when you're looking at a healthy profit margin industry, that is one of the things that they would actually highly consider, especially if these particular company you're looking at has very healthy profit margins and the management is really well. That's another reason that the banks would actually look to say yes. So give them a lot of reasons to say yes and very little reasons to say no. And a high profit margin industry is something that's a little bit of a no-brainer when it comes to that. And that's going to be the reason why your underwriter would be a little bit more favorable to okaying that loan and giving you the green light. But let's just talk about the age of these companies that you should be looking at. Again, this more so applied to guys who are just beginning. You want to look for companies who are established. Like Valentino and I, what we say is we acquire established businesses, right? Established cash flowing businesses. You don't want to acquire a business that's just only been around for maybe the last 2 years. Reason why is because every business, majority of businesses, and I don't have the stat pulled up right now, but majority of the businesses, when they start, they actually don't make it past that 5 year life cycle. And even after you pass that 5 year life cycle, you have to make it to the 10-year mark to actually start becoming a mature company, right? And that's not having taken any kind of major economic hit. So that being said, when you're looking at companies, you want to make sure that the company has been around for way more than 5 years. Typically, I like to look at companies who are, between that 7, 10, 15-year mark, but I'm a little bit more experienced in this. You want to look at companies who are a lot more older. Why? Because there's going to be stability in that cash flow, and you're able to look beyond just the 3 year mark, and you look at that 5 year mark, and even back to a 7 year mark. That would tell you a more accurate story of the performance of the company as opposed to just looking at those 3 year financials and seeing what the performance was. For example, COVID-19 just happened. If I'm acquiring a company right now, I wouldn't just typically look at the performance of when COVID-19 first started. I would actually look at when it ended. Reason why is because some industries, like Valentino mentioned previously, they have actually risen in valuation, certain companies. So you want to make sure that not only did it perform a particular way in the height of COVID-19, but you want to look at what is the normalization and performance of that company post COVID-19, meaning is it a company that experienced very high highs as opposed to the trailing 12, or is it a company who experienced very low and now that it's getting out of that environment, it's actually starting to perform the way that it performed previously to COVID-19. So you want to take a look at the year and the establishment of the business, and if it is something that's over 5 years, 7 years, and how steady those cash flows has been, and how influenced was that business during a very high economic downturn, right? Anything you want to add to that, Valentino?
No, I think that's a really great point. But let's move on to the next section, which is where to find the data. IBIS World and Statistica. They're going to be your number 2 goal sources. Now, IBIS World is very expensive. I'm talking about their reports can go up to $10,000. They're expensive, they're extensive, detailed, and typically up to date, which is what we love about them. But if you are looking for detailed industry reports at a more affordable rate, welcome to IB University. We have everything you need. Website is going to be ibuniversity.org/membership. And matter of fact, now that I got you guys here, let me share some of the Discord with you. Take a look at this. So here in the Discord, as you're able to see, you're going to land in the welcome page. But the first thing you're going to do is go to a start here section. Now, as you guys know, we've had previous Discords before. We have about 2 of them. And a lot of the members, newcomers specifically, they were confused and overloaded with the information. It was a lot of information. They didn't really know how to navigate it or get a true understanding of it. I feel like we were able to streamline the process because it was so high level. We were packing up too many sections or too many subcategories per section. As opposed here, now it's something more streamlined. So you can see start here. It's going to walk you through each section. Then you're going to have the introduction video. We're going to be dropping this information on the Facebook group very soon. But as for now, we're still polishing this up for you guys. You have your FAQ. You have the option to ask questions. And we have a dedicated AI bot that's going to answer a lot, if not almost all of your questions based on the information of the Discord, which is going to be great as you don't have to wait for an answer. We have resources. But if we come down here to mergers and acquisitions, as you can see here, industry identification, which is the section we're discussing, it gives you a more detailed understanding of various sectors and influences, either that are primary, secondary, tertiary. We have documents as well for every section. We got growth models, value proposition, executive summary. But here in the PDF section is where you're going to find those industry reports. You're going to find a lot of templates and documents that are going to speed up the process for you and streamline it, essentially pieces to your puzzle where you're going to put together. Now, with that said, remember to share, subscribe, and like these videos if you want more content like this. But Nancy, do you have any last remarks? I think we touched on a lot of great points, and this gives people a very good introduction to this topic.
Yeah, we did. We did. Only thing I want to finish with is, guys, if you want to get a PDF version of everything that we talked about in this video, right? If you are a more visual learner, or if you're like, hey guys, I need to have that PDF in my hands. I need to be able to see it. I need to be able to look at it every day because I'm thinking about getting into buying businesses. No problem. You got it. All you got to do is go to ibuniversity.org/membership and the PDF is yours. You would actually get access to the Discord and you'll be able to access every PDF, every file, every document we have, and access to the course in its entirety. Remember, go to ibuniversity.org/membership. All right, guys, next time.